Hey guys, my name's Avery Moore and welcome to my Think Aloud lesson. Today I'm just going to kind of go over how I use Think Alouds in my classroom, and then we'll analyze a nonfiction piece using the Think Aloud strategy. I work in Spring Branch ISD, and my school is a pretty heavily ESL populated school, I would say. I do teach English and reading, which is kind of a struggle for some of our students. So I know that I have a lot of English language learners in my classroom. And through my professional development and some trainings that I've gone to, the word Think Aloud just kept coming up. And that is a strategy that I have used since day one of teaching. And I think it's really beneficial, not just for my ELK students, but for all of my students as well. Because I think, honestly, everyone can benefit from the Think Aloud strategy. I use Think Alouds in my classroom whenever I am modeling annotations. So that's kind of how I introduce Think Aloud at the beginning of the year, is I model my annotations with a piece and introduce them to annotations that way. I will model the writing process using the Think Aloud method, and I will also model reading strategies using the Think Aloud method. Honestly, in my opinion, anything can really be modeled using the Think Aloud method, and I think it's important either way. I think that students really benefit from having it up on the board and having someone actually think through what they're supposed to be doing. Then that way they can model it on their own. So it's always good. I think it's good teaching practice just to have a model for students to go off of before they independently have to do it on their own, so they know what's expected and can ask questions and things like that. So with the Think Alouds, I do model the writing process. So we are a STAR-tested subject. So my students need to learn how to write an expository essay. So whenever I introduce that at the beginning of the year, I'm modeling using the Think Aloud. And this week, actually, we started STAR Prep. So we take the STAR test April 9th, which is coming up in about 11 school days. So we are really honing in on those standards of the STAR test and those domains. We do teach the test all year, but kind of indirectly. So these next 3 weeks are kind of what we call our boot camp. So we really just kind of drill in the STAR test standards to our students and have them get more familiarized with STAR pieces. So what we're going to do today, and what I've kind of been doing in class over the past few days, is I did a Think Aloud for the revising and editing section of the STAR test. I took a few pieces that I found from an old STAR test and really modeled those strategies, and then they also did it independently. And I gave them tips and tricks of how to answer those questions and kind of save some time without really kind of going in depth sometimes. So that's kind of what we're doing today in class. I'm actually going through this nonfiction piece, and we're analyzing it and figuring out kind of what the main message of it all is, because it goes along with a fiction piece, which we are reading tomorrow, and then we're going to connect those using connecting questions or cross-genre questions. So to begin, we have the low-tech appeal of Little Free Libraries. So that's the story that we're going to be reading today. And I know that low tech means very little technology, or it's not requiring technology. So I know that, and it's an appeal of little free libraries. So I see that word free, and I know that the word free means no cost. So there's clearly a library that's free. It says it's by Margaret Aldrich. So I know whenever it says the word by, that it's by whoever's the name after it. So I know that Margaret Aldrich is the author of this piece. The Atlantic. So I'm assuming that The Atlantic is maybe where it was published. Maybe it's a journal or maybe it's a magazine, and that's where this article was published. And then it says July 27th, 2014. So I know from my background that that means that's probably the publication date of when this article came out. It says, take a book, return a book boxes are catching on even in places where Kindles and brick and mortar libraries abound. So right away, I see that take a book, return a book. I kind of like that slogan. So you can basically take a book and then return it, is what I'm gathering from that. And brick and mortar, I know from my knowledge that brick and mortar basically just means like a building. It's like a storefront. It's kind of in my mind, what I think of as a traditional library. So clearly this box that we're talking about is taking place of normal libraries. So let's go ahead and begin. When 36-year-old bibliophile in Daegu, South Korea, sat down at his computer and Googled the word library, he didn't expect to find anything particularly noteworthy. But as Do Sun Yu scrolled through the results, an appealing anti-tech concept popped up. So right away, again, I saw low tech in the first, I saw low tech in the title of the piece. So then I see anti-tech, which again is kind of anti meaning against technology. So either way, this concept of this library has no technology whatsoever. So maybe you don't have to scan things in order to get a book is kind of how I am taking that as. So it says, the internet led him to little free libraries, hand-built boxes where neighbors can trade novels, memoirs, comics, and cookbooks and connect with each other in the process. So it says that these little free libraries are hand-built boxes. And so I see next to it that there's this image, and it looks like a hand-built, kind of like bird box almost or something. And it's just like on a little post, and it's a little box. So I'm assuming that this paragraph 2 is depicted in this picture. So this is kind of an example of what a little free library looks like. And then whenever I look even closer at the picture, it says little free library. So I know that this is kind of an example of what a little free library looks like. And then it says that they can connect with each other in the process. I'm curious about how they can connect with each other, so we'll see. The little libraries immediately appealed to Do Sun. Reading books is one of the most valuable things in my life. I think a book is equal to a treasure, he says. I hope to share that feeling with my neighbors. That's the reason I wanted a little free library. So right there, he wants to build a little free library because he wants to show his neighbors, friends, anyone around him that books are valuable and they're important and they're equal to a treasure. So where it says that's the reason I wanted a little free library, that's telling me that's the why behind, I'm assuming he chose to build a little free library. The website showed pictures of the diminutive structures standing in front yards, on city curbs, and alongside country roads all over the world, along with their GPS locations. The little free library map was a treasure map, he says. How cool. Soon after his online discovery, Do Sun built a little free library, the first one in South Korea. So he built a little free library in South Korea. That's awesome. In front of his apartment building. Then he built a second at a different spot. Then a third. Slowly his take a book, return a book libraries began bringing people together, garnering book donations and handwritten notes of thanks from strangers. So we come back to that slogan of take a book, return a book. And from what I can see based on the picture above, it just shows like a little box that has a door that I can open up and I take a book. And then again, it's free. And then I'm assuming that I can just return the book whenever I want. So he says that it's bringing people together. People are donating books, and strangers are really enjoying this new library concept. He now pastes a QR code on the front of each library, so passersby can use their smartphones to learn more about them. And he regularly exchanges emails with others who want to build their own. He recently started a Facebook group where other little free library stewards throughout Asia can swap ideas and experiences as easily as visitors to their libraries swap physical books. Wow. Okay, so basically he took this idea, because I'm going to kind of summarize paragraph 4, is he took this idea and now he is expanding it. Like he's teaching people how they can create their own little free library, which I think is awesome. So all of paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all kind of about Do Sun and him in South Korea building these little free libraries. So I automatically see in 5 that we're kind of changing the scenery a little bit. In 2009, Todd Bull built the first Little Free Library in the Mississippi River town of Hudson, Wisconsin, as a tribute to his mother, a dedicated reader and former school teacher. So now we're kind of shifting to a new person in, Hudson, Wisconsin, and he built the first Little Free Library in the Mississippi River town of Hudson, Wisconsin. That's really cool. And he paid it tribute to his mother, who was a former school teacher. When he saw the people of his community gathering around it like a neighborhood water cooler, exchanging conversations as well as books, he knew he wanted to take his simple idea further. Okay? So right there with that sentence, I'm automatically kind of connecting it to, Duson's idea kind of in paragraph, what was that? In paragraph 3, whenever he talked about how he wanted to build this idea of Little Free Libraries and how he wanted to expand on it. So right away, I'm kind of seeing a connection right there. And because he said that he also saw people coming together, loving books and exchanging good conversation based on these books. So that made him want to take this idea farther. Okay, I like that. So we'll go ahead and scroll up. We have a natural sense of wanting to be connected, but there's so many things that push us apart. I think Little Free Libraries open the door to conversations we want to have with each other. So I feel like that line right there, I would underline that line, because I think Little Free Libraries open the door to conversations we want to have with each other, because I feel like that's a reason or a purpose behind maybe the creation of the idea of Little Free Libraries. It's more about conversations than just going and swiping a library card and picking up a book. So I would probably underline that or star it because I feel like that's important. Since then, his idea has become a full-fledged movement, spreading from state to state, country to country. There are now 18,000 of these little structures around the world. So now, not only has this idea spread, but there are 18,000 of these structures around the world. And they're located in each of the 50 states and in 70 countries, from Ukraine to Uganda, Italy to Japan. They're multiplying so quickly, in fact, that the understaffed and underfunded nonprofit struggles to keep its world map up to date. So I know that this is probably another picture of a Little Free Library, so it just shows it kind of mounted on the side of something. It looks like on the side of a building, and it looks like, again, these look really much like a birdhouse kind of. And so you just open it and you can take a book. So that's really cool. So I know that this has now spread state to state. So now it has just grown. Now this Little Free Library has just grown. That's really cool. So Khalid and Yasmin Ansari live in Qatar, and they get special satisfaction out of seeing their 6-year-old son, Umar's Little Free Library, represented on the website. So right there, for some of my students, they're in World Geography as freshmen. So some of them may or may not know where Qatar is located. So using research and using the internet, I would probably search up where Qatar is. I know that Qatar is off of the coast of Saudi Arabia, kind of over in the Middle East. And a lot of my students, since they are in World Geography, they should kind of know where Qatar is. But that would be a moment where I would use my research skills and kind of figure out where that's located. When looking at the LFL world map, you almost feel obliged to have one in the neighborhood to fill the gap. It's like you're doing your part of the world. In some places, Little Free Libraries are filling a role usually served by brick and mortar libraries. Again, we see that word brick and mortar. So brick and mortar, again, from what I know, is just a brick kind of building. It's like a storefront, what I think as a normal library and what that looks like. The organization's Book Around the Block program, for example, aims to bring LFLs to places where kids and adults don't have easy access to books. in North Minneapolis, an area more often in the news for shootings than community engagement. The Books Around the Block initiative set up 40 of the little libraries. 200 more sprung up shortly thereafter. So I know from my knowledge that Minneapolis is in Minnesota. So we're talking about